Hello friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my least favorite books of 2024. I have 8 books to talk about. These are the lowest of the low. I've read like 120 books this year, and these are the 8 worst. But before we get into my list, I do want to give a little disclaimer. If you liked these books, I'm very happy for you. They just didn't work for me personally. There's no such thing, well, most of the time, books aren't bad. They just are for different people and don't work for some, and that's okay. Everyone has different tastes. So if you loved these books, let me know in the comments. Feel free to leave me a hate comment. Any engagement is good engagement, okay? So with that being said, let's hop right into my list. They are sort of ranked from least worst to worst. So stick around to the end for my least favorite book of the year. If you can guess, I'll give you a cookie. So the first book I want to talk about is Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. I read this in a reading vlog this fall, and I did not have a great time with this one. In this book, we're following Marigold, and at the beginning of the book, Marigold finds out from her grandmother that she is a honey witch, and her grandmother is getting older. She needs to train the next generation to take over her position. Marigold's mother swore off being a honey witch because she didn't like all of the baggage that came with it, so she is not magical, and she wants the same for her daughter, but Marigold doesn't feel like she has a place in her family in the life that they want her to lead, and so she decides to go with her grandmother to train as a honey witch. The problem with being a honey witch is that you can never fall in love, and no one can fall in love with you. There is a curse associated with this position. That is what Marigold is giving up, and she doesn't really think she's giving up that much until she meets this woman named Lottie, who like captures her heart, who she wants to be with, but of course they can't be together because of this curse. And so Marigold has to figure out if she still wants to be a honey witch. And there's also some dark forces like threatening her family and her world that she has to figure out what's going on and fight them, and if she can like justify giving all of this up and creating this unsafe environment just to be with Lottie. So she's stuck. This is her moral dilemma throughout the book. I liked the idea of this concept. It definitely was like a cozy fantasy vibe, and I liked that it was sapphic, but the writing just was not up to snuff. I found myself honestly really confused at points. There were a lot of plot holes, particularly with the curse and the magic system. The writing was also just very bland and matter of fact, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy simple writing, but this wasn't necessarily simple writing. It just didn't make sense. Also, our main character Marigold was such a flat character. Like, she had no personality, nothing interesting about her really, and that sucked to read from her perspective because we were in her perspective the entire book. I didn't like that. Also, Lottie as a love interest, really mean. I didn't really understand her motivations totally. I didn't really understand why Marigold liked her. I found it difficult to root for the romance. There was zero chemistry. Every character interaction in this book too was just really painful. Like, not only was the writing bad, the dialogue in particular was terrible. So it was really difficult to get into this story, to be invested in the story, and I ended up just not having a very good time, and so unfortunately this was one of the worst books I read this year. The next book I want to talk about is The Ride of Her Life by Jennifer Dugan. I also read this one in a reading vlog if you want more in-depth thoughts. This is a sapphic horse girl romance, and I really wanted to love it because that sounds right up my alley, honestly, but this book just did not hit the mark. It missed it completely, to be completely honest. In this book, we're following our main character, Molly. Molly inherits this horse farm from her estranged aunt, and she goes there hoping to evaluate the business, get it sold so that she can kind of create a nest egg for herself because she really wants to open her own business as a wedding planner. But when she gets there, she meets Shawnee, who was her aunt's like right-hand girl. She was like her stable girl, took care of the horses, like all of that good stuff. Shawnee instantly hates Molly. Shawnee kind of expected Molly's aunt to leave her the horse farm, and so she's kind of pissed that she didn't get left the horse farm, and she's also pissed that Molly wants to sell it out from under her. There's a lot of tension, and be in the video? Gonna be in the video? Yeah. You say hi? You say hi? Say hi. I always want to join. Okay, what was I saying? So there's a lot of animosity between Shawnee and Molly, but at the same time they're very attracted to each other, so this evolves into a romance of sorts, but they're still butting heads over the business side of things, so it creates a lot of tension in their developing relationship. And like I said, I wanted to love this one so bad, but it just wasn't it for me. Both of the main characters were absolutely insufferable. Shawnee, for one, was just very entitled. Like, I would never expect anyone to leave me anything. I was very off-put by the fact that she expected Molly's aunt to leave her this farm. Well, that was weird. And just to get so mad at Molly for considering all of her options was really weird. And she was just really rude to Molly. Molly is also stupid. She wasn't very good at communicating. She wasn't very good at like standing up for herself. Her friends walked all over her and that was really hard to read about. It didn't seem like anyone was really on her side and I kind of just wanted to shake her the whole book. And the chemistry between Shawnee and Molly was just pretty much non-existent. The hatred was palpable and like I understood why they didn't like each other, but jumping from hating each other into the romance didn't work for me. Wasn't a fan. All of the dialogue as well was pretty cringy and I just was getting whiplash from them going back and forth to like hooking up to hating each other, talking up to hating each other. It was just, it didn't make a lot of sense. There are also a lot of plot holes and like minor conveniences in the plot that just didn't make sense. It didn't line up, bothered me when I was reading. And so I did not get the 5-star sapphic horse girl romance of my dreams. I'm still on the hunt. If anyone has any recommendations, please let me know. Next, I want to talk about Going Public by Hudson Lin. This is an MLM workplace romance and it's basically boss employee. It follows Raymond and Elvin. Raymond is the boss, Elvin is his assistant. Elvin has always had a crush on Raymond. They get assigned some kind of project or like they're investigating something. So they're spending a lot of late nights in the office, working together a lot more, and Raymond kind of finally sees Elvin like outside of the work environment and decides that he's in love with him. And it's basically their romance and it's offset by this mystery that's happening within this business structure thing. I don't know. There were a number of reasons I didn't like this one. I kind of went into it not expecting to like it. I wanted to see what it was about, you know, I read it for a purpose. It definitely started out better than I expected. Like the first 50%, it was like, okay, this is kind of fun. It's not that bad. It's not gonna be a 5-star read, but it's not terrible. But then it just like kept going downhill after the 50% mark. For one, Raymond is painted as this like very much playboy character, and the jump from him being this playboy character and never seeing Elvin in any kind of light other than professional was very jarring because he just was immediately like, oh my god, I've always been in love with you, just haven't realized it. I was like, okay, sounds suspicious. But there was also just a lot of like businessy things, and Raymond makes a lot of shady decisions and shady deals. I just like wasn't really here for that. I was like, I don't know if like morally and ethically I really like you as a character at the end of this book. And the ending itself was very rushed and just weird things were happening, went in a weird direction. I was like, not sure I like this, not sure I can get behind this. And so this one ended up being like a 2-star romance for me, and I just really didn't like it very much, and it ended up being on this list of least favorites of 2024. Next, I want to talk about Her Countess to Cherish by Jane Walsh. This is a sapphic Regency romance, and it had some good aspects, but it also had some not so good aspects. The plot of this book is kind of convoluted for how short it is, but basically we're following our main character Beatrice, and Beatrice marries this man named Everson to save her family from financial ruin, even though she doesn't love him, and he's actually kind of awful to her, and her wedding night results in an unexpected pregnancy. She doesn't know this at first, and after her like unsatisfactory wedding night, she ends up starting this like emotional affair with this man named Mr. George Smith, and then she discovers she's pregnant. Her initial thought is, oh, I'll divorce my current husband and marry Mr. Smith. Problem is, Mr. Smith is also Lady Georgina, and so this whole situation is very complicated. And both women kind of have to question their identities and how they want to stand in society and all of that stuff. So the good about this book, I did enjoy the rep. There's bisexual rep, bigender rep, which you don't get very often, and it's also not advertised really as a part of this book. I really enjoyed that, and I thought it was done well-ish, but I just thought the execution of the plot of the story of the characters was not good. The writing was just really bad. It felt so amateurish when I was reading it, which just made it difficult to feel anything for the characters, understand what was going on, be invested in the world. The writing wasn't up to snuff, so my reading experience was not up to snuff. Next, I want to talk about You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This is probably the first book on this list that I actively hate. This is a contemporary romance book following Josh and Ari. Josh and Ari start off as enemies. They are connected by a shared relationship with the same woman. I think that they're like dating her at the same time, or like exes or something. Or maybe it's Ari's roommate. I don't remember who the woman is that connects them. It doesn't matter. Years later, they like run into each other, experience an unexpected friendship because they have both just recently been dumped, so they kind of become friends, start hanging out, use each other as emotional support, and then eventually their platonic relationship begins to blur the lines, and they have to confront the possibility that maybe they should be something more. I really can't decide though which of these main characters I hated more. They were both such like caricatures of people, and they were both so irritating. Josh is a very like buttoned up, no fun allowed kind of person, and Ari is absolute opposite. She is a disaster. She is just all over the place. She's messy. She's late all the time. She's just like can't function as a normal person in society. Doesn't do anything about it. Get some therapy. Get some help. Both of them need serious help. They need a good therapist and to go twice a week. They were both just like disaster humans, and I don't know. I am not someone who loves to read about messy characters. Of course, I like my characters to be real. I like them to have flaws, but like messy, toxic characters are just not my cup of tea. They're not fun for me to read about. It's just not my vibe, you know? So both of them being like that, I found it so difficult to relate to or connect to either of them, and thus I was not invested in their relationship. I just wanted to throw this book away, to be honest with you. Also, I have a mini rant to go along with this book. This book included this message that you're only complete once you find your soulmate, ace-phobic bullshit. I just need this to stop happening. Like, can we stop making these sweeping generalizations that everyone is better and happier with a partner, because it's bullshit and we should know that by now. So fucking stop including it in your books, especially your queer books. Cut it out. Moving on. The next book I want to talk about is The Gay Best Friend by Nicholas D'Amizio. In this book, we're following our main character, Dominic. Dominic is always caught between the two extremes of his best friends. He has his girl best friend over here, his guy best friend over here. Dominic is the gay best friend in the middle. His two best friends are getting married, and Dominic is the best man for like both of them. He's invited to the bachelorette as well as the bachelor party. Throughout this book, he goes to both parties, learns these crazy secrets about both parties, and is pulled in so many different directions because he's like, where do my true loyalties lie? Who is actually a good friend to me? Who do I need to be behind? Am I responsible for telling the other party these things that I'm learning? And so he's just like caught in the middle of this mess. And along the way, he has a romance with another groomsman who is also a famous golf player, and they have this like, oh, I'm famous, so this has to be a secret kind of romance, and I'm tired of that storyline, to be honest with you. But anyway, I will say that this book was compulsively readable. Like, it was really easy to read. It was a quick read. I got through it really fast. The audiobook was done well, like easy to listen to. But that's about where my list of positives ends, to be honest with you. And I was reading a lot of Goodreads reviews about this, and a lot of people didn't like Dom as a main character because they said he was like whiny and complained too much. And like, I see that, but also Dom was the only like decent redeemable character in this book, in my opinion. He definitely did not bother me nearly as much as everyone else in this book did, and I'm like so confused on the reviews that are like, I couldn't read this book because of him. I'm like, because of him? What? The way Dom's two best friends treated him was truly terrible and disgusting. Like, they are both just crazy, and putting him in the middle is just so unfair to him. They really treated him so terribly as to be unforgivable, in my personal opinion. And then when they have like their third act kind of like breakup, falling apart, and Dom like finally stands up for himself, everyone else in his life tells him to go apologize. I was fuming. I was like, what do you mean he needs to go apologize? Those two other fuckers that caused this whole situation need to apologize to him. This is ridiculous. And like I said about the romance storyline, I really despised it. I could not root for the relationship in this book because of the way that the love interest treated Dom as well. Like, literally everyone in his life was just stomping all over him, and everyone was like, you should say sorry. Like, I don't understand what's going on here. I don't get it. The love interest treated him so poorly, forced him in the closet, ignored him around other people, like just would not commit or admit his feelings. And like, I get that it will ruin your career, whatever. I don't know. It just is such a tired storyline. And I know like everyone has their own time for coming out, but that's not the time to pull Dom into your life and just expect him to be okay with everything. That's the part that I don't like. Sure, you can want to meet someone who will meet you where you're at, but if they're not meeting you where you're at, not the time or place. And he just kept like stringing Dom along, which I just was very frustrating to read about. And then this is a spoiler. If you don't want to hear this, skip to the next book, but there's this forced coming out scene, this outing scene, and that's how the relationship resolves. Like, no one has to make any decisions, no resolutions come of this conflict, it's just decided for them. And they're like, okay, that's the happy ending. And like, this is such a cheap way for a book to do this, and it's so frustrating to me because if these characters can't meet each other where they're at and work out their issues, how am I supposed to believe as a reader that they're going to be okay and believe in this happily ever after? Like, I can't, because it was decided for them. It's just such a cop-out thing to do, in my opinion, and I'm just sick of it. I've read too many books like this. I'm just sick of it. Anyway, yeah, wasn't a fan of this one. Next on my list is Just As You Are by Camille Kellogg. I also wanted to love this book because it's a sapphic Pride and Prejudice retelling set in modern day New York. I thought it was gonna be good. Wasn't good. In this book, we're following our main character, Liz. Liz is a writer at this women's magazine. She writes like this sex advice column. She thinks that her work is good, but she also wants to be taken more seriously as a writer, I believe. Anyway, the magazine is bought out by this new duo, and so Liz gets this new boss named Daria. Daria is like very cold and closed off, thinks the magazine's kind of ridiculous, wants to take things in a different direction. She's really just like the numbers person and not the people person. But Liz and Daria really butt heads, but then as they spend more time together at this like collapsing queer magazine, and they do have some chemistry, and so this turns into an enemies to lovers romance. I will say that I do think that this one was well written. I think a lot of the other books on this list did read very amateurish, but I would not say that about this one. That's the only nice thing I can think about. Basically, I hated every character. I hated everything that happened. I thought everyone was mean and messy and made terrible decisions, and once again, don't like to read about messy, toxic characters. I just don't, and that's what everyone in this book was. I really found it difficult to get behind anyone in this book and anyone's decisions. I also do think that the romance was very strange and it kind of seemed to appear out of nowhere. I was getting these two characters don't like each other. One's cold and one's bubbly and grumpy sunshine, but the chemistry, not there. Even like, they've really had very few interactions throughout this book. I don't know, I felt nothing for this book other than anger, so I didn't like it. 1 star. And last, and certainly least, is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. This is my official least favorite book of 2024. Woo. Bad. This book is following two bisexual exes, Kit and Theo. Kit and Theo broke up for some mysterious reason 4 years prior. They hate each other, but they have accidentally booked the same European tour, and so they meet back up and are forced to address their past, and to prove that they are totally over one another, they decide on this hookup competition throughout Europe, and whoever hooks up with the most unique people wins. But of course, they're totally not over each other. There's lots of unresolved feelings. There's lots of chemistry still. Of course, you know, I'm sure you can predict what happens. I wanted to love this book so bad. I have loved every other Casey McQuiston book, and I was so excited for this one. We haven't gotten a new book in a while. I was like, yippee, I am so excited. I'm gonna love this book. And then I started reading it. And I kept reading it, and I kept reading it, and I just hated it with every additional page I read. It got to the point where I was really having to force myself to pick it up, but I just kept hoping that it would get better because I was like, it's Casey McQuiston, it can't be that bad, but it was so bad. It was so bad. I hated it so much. To me, I think I particularly hated it because casual sex is just such a foreign concept to me, and I don't really want to read about my characters in a romance book having casual sex with other people and talking about it with the love interest and convincing them and themselves that they're not still in love. I just didn't like it. It felt icky. It felt like they were being mean to each other, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like reading about it. Also, both characters are totally and completely insufferable. Theo comes from a family of famous people. I can't rely on my famous people to make my way in the world. I want to make my own way in the world, but I recognize my privilege. They were just so annoying. I was like, get real. And Kit, also completely insufferable. Unpopular opinion, I think Kit is more insufferable than Theo. He's like if Tumblr 2015 text post came to life. Like, that's how Kit talks. Reading half of the book from his perspective, disgusting. Like, I wanted to puke. He's so annoying. So annoying. If I was Theo, would probably never forgive Kit. And just the whole reason they broke up was so stupid. It was so dumb. So dumb. This book was just terrible. I hated it. I hated every second of it. I hated every page. I would not recommend this book to my worst enemy. Alright, and those were my worst books of 2024. Please let me know in the comments down below what your worst books of 2024 were. I would love to know. Sometimes it's nice just to rant, get things off your chest. Feel free to do that in my comments down below. If this is your first time watching, or if you're not already, I would appreciate you subscribing to my channel, along with liking the video and leaving a comment. Those things all help me out a lot over here. If for some reason you're a masochist and want to read some of these books, I'll link them in the description. It's up to you. These are affiliate links. It'll help me out. Don't think it will help you out though, so I don't know. Whatever you're feeling though, it's there for your convenience. You can also follow me on all social media. Those links are in the description as well. And I think that is everything for me. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.